Let's continue with our session, Lesson 6, Textual Analysis. By this time, you should have your lecture notes with you and then the additional notes that we have forwarded earlier. As we go through the session, I will ask you to read some of the sections and I read some of the sections as well. So, textual analysis. What are our objectives for this session or lesson? Number 1 is to discuss the goal of biblical textual criticism, review and summarize the process involved in textual criticism, examine some examples of textual problems. What is the goal of textual criticism anyway? Tove explains that textual criticism deals with the origin and nature of all forms of a text, in our case, the biblical text. This involves a discussion of its putative original form or forms and an analysis of the various representatives of the changing biblical text. The analysis includes a discussion of the relation between these texts, and attempts are made to describe the external conditions of the copying and the procedure of textual transmission. So you note there will be an examination of the relationships of the text and also the copying and procedure of textual transmission. I will ask you now to please read MacArthur's argument. So the goal is the determination of the primitive text to which the various surviving copies bear witness. When they refer to primitive text, this refers to the text type that lies behind the Masoretic text. Waltke says that it's important that this text will be restored, that the original text will be restored because it is foundational to exegesis and theology. So that affects us as we study the scripture. Process involved in textual criticism. I will read letter A. The starting point, a proper critical attitude is important. MacArthur, agreeing with another scholar, expressed that a starting point in good textual criticism is the cultivation of the proper critical attitude, which the student should constantly keep in mind. This is referring to an evaluative mind, ability to evaluate even the witnesses. First, the only absolute laws in textual criticism are the laws of reason and logic. Second, these laws must be applied to every textual problem individually and afresh. I want you to read letter B, please. Letter C, collect and compare witnesses. Number 1, decipher and write out the variants listed in the BHS apparatus. Number 2, consultation of non-Hebrew witnesses, the Septuagint, the Peshitta, the Targums, the Vulgate, and the Samaritan Pentateuch, if working with the Pentateuch. At this point, it's beyond the beginner's expertise, but since we have a copy of the Septuagint, venture to use this along with Lancelot if you are initiated. Number 3 is collate the witnesses by language group, meaning you put together all the Hebrew witnesses and then all the Greek witnesses. Number 4, would you please read that? I'll read number 5. Compare empty with its non-Greek versions like the Peshitta, the standard form, the Syriac Bible, the Targum, one of the Aramaic translations of the Old Testament, and Vulgate, Jerome's Latin translation. Actually, the Vulgate has no independent testimony, so sometimes it's usually discarded. And then number 6, retrovert back to Hebrew. The student can use a concordance to the Septuagint, usually Hatch and Redpath. This gives an alphabetized listing of the Greek and Hebrew equivalences. And number 7, discard witnesses without independent value. The principle involved, when witness B is known to be dependent upon witness A, the value of B is discounted when it agrees with A. The corollary, however, is this. When B disagrees with A, it may reflect an independent and authentic reading, which must then be considered as possibly original. So, a reading that was derived from another reading is of secondary value. Usually, the Old Latin is dependent on the Septuagint, and then the non-Hebrew manuscripts are dependent on the Masoretic text. Let's look at letter D, evaluate the variants. This refers to your external evidence and the internal evidence. So I'll read. The external evidence usually refers to the quality and age of the manuscript that supports a reading. The MT has a higher value. This, however, should not keep you from evaluating other witnesses. The traditional criteria for this are to choose the oldest, the most, the best, but this is not always reliable. Apply this with caution. Would you please read the internal evidence? In letter C, the shorter reading is to be preferred, lectio brevior. There is the tendency of scribes to amplify, explain, or smoothen a text. So the shorter reading is to be preferred. But with A, B, C, like what reading could have given rise to the other, the more difficult is to be preferred. The shorter is to be preferred. Between these, they should not be taken in isolation, meaning all these three should be together as you evaluate a witness. Don't just use A or B or C. They should all come together. Then another major point is to E, select the best reading. Choose the one that has the closest claim to the original. And F, emendation. Emend only when the attested readings of the text do not make sense. Even then, this must be done with caution. MacArthur suggests for the student to ask these two questions when attempting to make emendations. Does the proposed emendation explain all the transmitted readings? Is it suited to its context? If he can answer both of these questions affirmatively, the critic need not be reticent in amending the text. If the answer to either is negative, however, he must be willing to abandon his emendation and declare the problem unsolved. I'm not expecting you to be able to do emendation and evaluate other text witnesses at this point. But if you are initiated, you need to see also Tov Emmanuel, Evaluation of Readings in Textual Criticism of the Hebrew Bible, pages 293 to 311. To summarize, what's the process involved? Start with a proper critical attitude, identification of perceived textual issue, collection and comparison of witnesses, evaluation of the variants, selection of the best reading, and then emendation.